Hi guys, I'm Ryan Thomas. This is my podcast or my video cast, Mr. Ryguy92 on YouTube. I have a First Take, Thomas Take Facebook account. It's called The Thomas Take. If you guys want to check that out, add it on Facebook, comment, like my videos, repost them if you want, do whatever. UFC 162, Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman. The middleweight belt was on the line. Anderson Silva has been the champ since probably 2007, the last 6-7 years, and he has been long time number one pound for pound fighter in the world today. On most people's pound for pound rankings, he is number one, and boy did that ever change on a July 8th night, as the Long Island fighter known as Chris the All-American Weidman shocked the world. To recap the fight, most people know this already, but to give my account of my experience watching UFC 162, I knew, being a fan of the UFC for a long time, that Anderson, and watching a lot of Anderson Silva's fights, he tends to drop his hands as a way of getting the guys to go after him, and drawing people into his game. He's known as probably the best striker in MMA history, so it's really no shock that he was doing that to Chris Weidman. What a shock it was to me, though, was in between rounds 1 and 2, he kind of got into the center of the octagon and started yelling stuff at Chris Weidman, which was uncharacteristic of him. I think Anderson wanted to prove to the world that he belongs where he is, and I feel like leading up to this fight, he kind of felt a little disrespected because most of his counterparts were saying that Chris Weidman was going to win the fight. And what I really think about that is, they thought that for a reason. Chris Weidman has a really rare skill set with his wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and his striking is fairly decent as well. And he's just very determined and very hungry and a very confident young guy. For all the stuff that Anderson had done in his career, Chris Weidman didn't let that, stargaze, run through his body which most fighters do. They're in such awe of Anderson that his legend kind of defeats them before they even get in there to fight him. And Chris Weidman never let that on throughout the whole build-up to the fight and throughout the fight, as obvious as it was. Once Chris Weidman knocked out Anderson Silva, you knew then and there that this guy has a really strong will, and he's young, he's hungry, and he just did what he said that he was going to do. I don't even think he necessarily believed that he was going to beat Anderson Silva, but he definitely did that, and he did that in dramatic fashion. And after the fight, Anderson Silva said that he did not know what his next step was as far as fighting for the belt anymore. There was talk of him fighting John Jones. There was talk of him fighting George St. Pierre. There was talk of him fighting Roy Jones Jr. And for those of you that don't know who Roy Jones Jr. is, he was a long-time light heavyweight boxing champion, and a staple in the light heavyweight division in the sport of boxing for quite a while. And it was always kind of a head-scratcher to me as to why Anderson was picking his battles with a guy of that caliber, a guy of Roy Jones Jr.'s caliber. But he did, and he was anyway. And now we go from a place where, what do the journalists put up on their thing? Do they put that Anderson Silva is still the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world? Do they put that Anderson Silva is the number one middleweight in the world? Due to the fact that he lost the weight that he did, I can't do that myself. I can't. Being a follower of the sport, being a guy that is a novice reporter of going on YouTube and posting these videos, doing my Facebook site, I physically can't put him number one anymore after that fight. He kind of dug his own grave as to losing that fight, And by putting his guard down and by doing the things that he did, it made him look like he was disrespecting Chris Weidman. He said even in the lead-up to the Weidman fight that he doesn't do that to disrespect his opponents, but to put on a show for the fans. And as a fan, I don't necessarily respect that. I don't respect showboating. I never showboated in anything that I've done. Maybe, you know, two-hand touch football with my friends is a joke, but in strict competition, you never want to do that. And sometimes in competition, you let the heat of the moment rush through you, and I think that's what Anderson Silva did. Whether or not he goes from being the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time, or you know, going back up to that again, remains to be seen. December 28th in MGM Grand Garden Arena, there will be a rematch on pay-per-view again between the champion Chris Weidman and the #1 contender Anderson Silva. Whether people, Anderson Silva fans, or not like that idea, it is going to happen. Anderson has no other fight now that he's lost the belt. He has no other fight for him that is as appealing as the one with Chris Weidman, and the one with Chris Weidman makes him a lot of money. So it's the only door that's open to him. It's the only door that he can really walk through as far as going down that path and fighting Weidman again. But right now, the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world would either be John Jones or George St. Pierre. I would say more so John Jones, just because he's fought more as of recently. GSP had that knee injury, and he beat Condit and Diaz. But John Jones, with the run that he has put on, he is technically an undefeated fighter at 18-0, or it should be actually 19-0. But he's 18-1 due to a disqualification loss to Matt Hamill a long time ago, a couple years back. So I'm sure the UFC has tried to get that disqualification off of his record, and unfortunately they were not able to. And you know, he's got that one blemish on his record because of it. I'm really excited though to see the rematch. I think the rematch needs to happen between Weidman and Silva to put to bed whether the fact that it was a lucky shot by Weidman or whether Anderson can beat Weidman. I want to see if he still can. When I did my UFC pick'em on UFC.com, I put Silva as winning the fight. I picked Silva to win the fight. But with so much riding against Anderson the past time, there's even more riding against him this time due to the fact that he got knocked out by Chris Weidman and due to the fact that he got knocked out the way that he did. And it wasn't necessarily what Weidman did to Anderson, it was about what Anderson did to Anderson. And that's why the rematch is happening. People want to know if that was Anderson's fault for being knocked out, or if it was Weidman's success for knocking out Anderson. I did pick Weidman in the rematch. I think that he is going to be a man possessed to do whatever it is that he needs to do to win this fight. Sorry for my typing, but I wanted to quote Chris Weidman on something that he said. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. He said after the fight, and I quote, that Anderson was just a man and he didn't want to scare himself out of winning the fight. And he did not do that. He deserves to be where he is. He is 10-0. He's beat Mark Munoz and Anderson Silva in his last two fights. Besides that, he did beat Uriah Hall on the underground scales of mixed martial arts. And those are really his only 3 remarkable wins. But as remarkable as only those 3 wins out of his 10 wins were, the fact that he is 10-0 in professional mixed martial arts competition says a lot. And think of it this way, hypothetically thinking, and I like to play this game. I like to play the matchmaker game when it comes to the UFC because they put on so many good fights. But anyway, when Chris Weidman beats Anderson again, where does Anderson go from there? Does he retire? Does he move up to the light heavyweight division? Does he somehow talk his way into fighting Weidman for a third time? I don't know. I really don't know where Anderson Silva will go from here. He is approaching his 40s. He's 38, 39 years old. So I think if he loses to Weidman, he'll be all but done. Where does Weidman go after he beats Anderson Silva? Well, I think that a guy that is due for a title shot, has never had a title shot, and has been in the UFC for quite a while. I am no fan of Michael Bisping, but he has been in the UFC for a long time. If he racks together a couple wins, maybe he could get a title shot. UFC doesn't seem too crazy about giving Vitor that title shot, even though he has defeated Bisping and Rockhold by devastating knockout in his last two fights. Mark Munoz and Bisping are going to go at it in Manchester, England. So I'm assuming that the winner of that fight will face Anderson, no matter what happens. And I'm assuming that that is the direction that the UFC is going, because both those guys have been in the UFC for a while, and both of those guys have done a lot to help the middleweight division. I'm going to post my UFC 163 post-fight reaction. Jose Aldo next on the UFC. Jose Aldo versus Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie. UFC 163, I believe it's August 3rd. I'm not sure if I'm correct on that, but I'm going to post my post-fight reaction to that on YouTube, and I won't be actually getting the pay-per-view for that one. I'm not a big Jose Aldo fan, and I just it's not a deep enough card to buy it, and it might be a deep enough card to drive 28 minutes or 30 minutes to wherever bar it's playing at. But either way, I'll do my research. I'll post where I think the UFC should go from there, and stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching. If you want to add my Facebook, it's Thomas Take, and I post all these videos onto there, so it's another outlet for you guys to watch my videos and comment on my videos. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a good day.